Who are you now? Life is full of transitions, some expected and some that shake us to our core. I'm Chrissie Morgan, and this podcast is all about navigating those moments and discovering who you are on the other side. We'll talk about self-nurture, midlife, reinvention, and how change, when embraced, can be the greatest gift. Through real conversations, expert insights, and unfiltered truths, we're going to explore what it means to shift, evolve, and fully step into the life you're meant for. Welcome to Who Are You Now? Today's conversation is profound. I'm talking today with Craig Cooke, former CEO, author, Qigong practitioner, and someone who has made a profound shift from high-level business to deep energy work. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Chrissie. Happy to be here.
Great. So I want to start by asking you if you could describe yourself today in 3 words, what would they be?
I would say open, positive, and exploratory.
No, I like that. I like the last one. Wow.
Thank you. It's fun.
It is. Well, you're in a great time of life too,
yes,
right?
100%.
So let's talk about that. At 25, you started your digital marketing agency, Rhythm.
Yes, many moons ago.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you made that decision at such a young age?
Yeah, the way that came about, at the time, I had 3 big passions, but 2 main ones that came to the birth of Rhythm, the name of my company at the time, rhythmnet.com, was a passion for music and a passion for technology. And one day coming home from the beach, I stopped at this computer store, and way back in those days, there's these CD-ROM magazines. And I picked this one up called MusicNet. I was like, oh, that looks interesting. Took it home, popped it in the days of the CD-ROMs, and it had all these more like independent, unknown bands and artists that I never heard of. And I was like, wow, what a great way to discover new music. And at the time I was playing around with the internet, getting online through America Online at the time on a 14.4 modem. If people know what I'm talking about there, definitely dating myself, but super slow connection and made all those funny noises. And at the time I was playing a lot of music with a friend of mine, and then showed him that CD and just conversations. And wouldn't it be great to do something like this for other artists, but online instead of a CD-ROM? And, one thing led to the next, and I started the company with a couple of friends, and rhythmnet.com was born. And it's a place where people could discover independent music online, listen to song samples, buy CDs through a secure server. Wow. Way back in 1996.
The days of the beginnings of the internet, right?
Yeah. Those are I call it the ancient days.
Oh, I do. Those of us that are our age, they get it. But the young ones, that was Yellow Pages, dial up, Thomas Guides, right?
Yeah. I like to say our generation, Gen X, built the internet. Mm-hmm. And then the millennials, they grew up with the internet, and now Gen Z, they were born with the internet. So it's very interesting to just see that progression and how much change there's been, and how each of these generations, just the adoption of technology, how quick things are evolving. It's really fascinating.
It's fascinating to watch. It's a little scary.
Yeah, it is.
Especially from someone who I don't come from the tech world. I've been using my hands for 30 years. And so even doing this, the learning curve, there's so much out there. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what they do with it all, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So let's talk about the evolution of your business, because you went from startup in 1996 to the Inc. 5000, and you were awarded not only the best place to work for 4 years, but the fastest growing private company in the United States for 5 years.
Yeah. And it was quite a process of adaptation and evolution. When we started, it was rhythmnet.com and a site to discover independent music, which so we were marketing independent music, but it was really challenging to make money. And starting the company, I only had $1,300 and a computer. So, right. We didn't have resources, didn't know anybody. Everything was brand new. No one really knew anything about the internet anyways. At the time, there was only 30 million people worldwide connected. So everyone was just trying to figure it out. So it was very challenging to make money, good money. And after a couple of years, there was a pivot to design websites for companies because people we knew, they kept saying, hey, this internet stuff, can you design a website for our company? It's like, yeah, sure, why not? And after getting enough of those requests, it's like, wow, we can actually make really good money doing this. So we switched gears, became RhythmNet Design Group, kept rhythmnet.com on the side and kept advancing that. And then at the time, it was about 1998, I just saw a vision for how the whole marketing and advertising landscape was going to change. And it was going to be much more about a integrated approach through the combination of online and offline. And then just started working towards building up capabilities to build that model. Right. And in 2004, we rebranded as Rhythm Interactive, and really as an interactive agency that combined a multitude of capabilities like email marketing, search marketing, even some print design, of course, websites, and just kept adding on to that. And then eventually rebranded again as Rhythm somewhere around 2012 or 14. And that's when we hit that growth stride of landing on the Inc. 5000 list, as you said, 5 years in a row, which was really cool because only 7% of companies that get on the list achieve that. Wow. And at the same time, getting best places to work, top places to work 4 years in a row. And we actually stopped applying because we were just so busy. But yeah, it was quite an amazing time of growth and transformation. And it was exciting, but very challenging too.
Yeah. So, you were grinding for a good 15 years, 2009 to 2014 and probably beyond. Mm-hmm. But what did success cost you?
Well, it's a great question. Early on, I'd say it cost me a lot of relationships, especially with like friends I had, from college, some friends from high school. I just really kind of dropped a lot of relationships and just really focused on the work. Also, I stopped practicing martial arts, which was the other big passion of mine, because I was just so beyond 100% all in. Mm-hmm. And that's all I did was just work. And even my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, there was even that time was limited just because it was just so all in, luckily, or thankfully, that I didn't sacrifice that relationship.
Right. She was very patient, I'm sure.
Yeah. She was very patient with me, actually. But yeah, it was, so that was the one thing. And then later on, like a decade later, there was this big realization of my health was totally sacrificed.
Yeah. So really your personal foundation started to slip a little bit.
Yes.
How was your stress level at that time insane as well?
Oh, yeah.
Kudos to your wife, man. That's a lot to stand by someone's side and witness and partner with through that process as well. Yeah, absolutely. Because she was a graphic designer at the time, art director. So we would actually hire her to do our heavy hitting work at times. And so it was a neat partnership, those early days of helping each other out. But yeah, she was so totally patient. And just that foundation of health, just totally went away. And I paid a big price for that, but thankfully I turned that around. Yeah. So when did you start noticing sort of the first signs of, I would say, the crumbling of the foundation or the cracks?
I'd say probably around 2012, I just noticed that, wow, I'm just really tired and I need to do something about it. Mm-hmm. But the only thing I really did was, let me just start taking some vitamins, supplements, and at least do that. I'll start there. and felt a little better actually, just because I was just in such on the opposite end of the spectrum, and would work out here and there, but it wasn't consistent. It was just kind of intermittent.
Right.
I started feeling a little better, but it took several years and stages of different activities to really recapture that health, which I'm sure we'll get into some of this stuff.
Yeah. So my big premise is that there's 4 bodies. It's the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And
Yes.
that comprises everything. And one cannot exist without the other.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, if one is overloaded, it spills over into the others as well.
Yes.
So can you tell me from each one of those bodies what you were feeling? Like physically, you said you were just exhausted and drained, but how was that affecting you emotionally at that time?
Yes. So stress was a big factor. You mentioned stress. So yeah, there's the physical body that just was being depleted. But then from an emotional and mental state, there was, those bodies were being compromised as well due to heavy stress through interactions with various people, whether it's people inside the company or clients, vendors, juggling family life. There's all these different interactions with all these relationships that you have. And the stress continues to build and build. And if you're not doing certain things to mitigate that stress, it just compounds. And that was something I found myself in 2014 from a mental and emotional standpoint. I just was not myself.
Right. And how did that affect your spirit?
It was interesting. I just realized like, I'm just not myself. Mm-hmm. I'm stressed all the time, angry, frustrated, had a short fuse.
Yeah, a little cranky.
Yeah, cranky. Was not as patient as I normally was. And that was with people at work and at home too. So, all aspects of my life and relationships were being impacted through this mental, emotional state that was really being compromised due to the high levels of stress and me not taking care of myself.
Right. So was there a tipping point when you realized that something needs to change here? Did you define it, or was this just this gradual roll into like, all right, I don't have a choice?
Yeah. So like in 2012 was more like the physical aspect that I mentioned, but in 2014, just having that realization, like, God, I'm just not myself. I'm out of balance. Right. and just off centered. And fortunately at that time, a friend of mine who I was working on a side project with referred me to this gentleman that was a medical Qigong practitioner. And I was intrigued because of my exposure to Qigong when I studied Chinese Kung Fu, but that was the martial Qigong. And I was like, wow, I wonder if he's the real deal. All right, I'll go check him out. And he just happened to be less than 5 minutes down the street from my office on the same street.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it was like totally divinely guided, because
Absolutely.
If he was like 30 minutes away, I'd probably have been like, oh, I'd really like to see him, but I don't have time.
Right.
Just because I was just so busy. But less than 5 minutes. Wow. Okay. I'm going to go check him out, see if he's the real deal. And he sure was. So I went, had a great experience. I would go back to him once a month for about 6 months. His name's Russ Anderson. Great guy. I talk to him all the time. Still, right. We're very close. And after 6 months, I just started feeling much more centered and balanced, and started feeling more like my old self. And there was a big realization for me, like, wow, I didn't realize how much I was off-centered and out of balance. Like I knew there was an issue.
Oh, sure.
But not to the degree that it was, because, you're in it and you're grinding, and you just don't realize how you're not only taking care of yourself, but how your mind, body, and spirit is getting depleted. And that was a big realization. And the great thing too, after that 6 month period, and he asked me if I want to learn the work. And I said, absolutely. And so in January 2015, I started a study under him.
That's when it sort of began for you.
Yeah, so that's when it began. And I just, built my own personal cultivation practice and then eventually led to other things. But, really being able to maintain that balance and that sense of being centered, which was really conducive to continuing to perform at an optimal level to reach greater heights of success in my company.
Right. Well, yeah. And we'll talk about that. That's adding that in allows you to perform at a high level.
Yes.
I don't want to say infinitely, but also being aware of, and I need to slow down a little bit, having that boundary of your health, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, so that you can stay in check.
100%.
Right.
100%. And really, go at it, but have much more energy in the long term. And then actually in 2017, then there was another aspect of physical health that came into play. And I'd been practicing Qigong, and it really helped from not only a mental and emotional standpoint, but at a physical level too, to a certain degree. But in 2017, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and I was like, wow, both my parents had it. So I was not surprised, but surprised at how early it came on. But it all made sense because all the symptoms, like, oh yeah, that's why I have foggy brain. And that's why I was, in the past getting so tired and crashing in the afternoon, crashing at night.
Crashing,
Yeah. And just not able to perform like I used to. So I made a big decision to commit to myself, to take care of myself and turn my health around completely, and really started to take much more of an active role in physical exercise and diet, nutrition, sleep, hydration, along with the Qigong practice, to really get the complete picture of health going for me. And thankfully I was able to reverse that condition 100% without any medication.
Without meds. I know you're telling me that. That's dedication.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, that's going all in like you do with your business, but going all in for your health. And it's a testament because it can be done. It's a lot of work, but you can take something like getting diabetes later on in life and really reverse it.
Yes.
Right?
You just have to commit to it and be disciplined. And as long as you take the approach where it's like a holistic approach, it can be done. And at the time, I was like, wow, how am I going to do this? Because I was so busy, right? 2017. I think that was the 5th year that we were on the Inc. 5000 list, and we were continuing to grow. And I was like, how am I going to do this? And I said, well, the only way I can do this is I just got to get up earlier.
I know, losing that last little bit of precious sleep.
Yeah. And I just had to, it's a lifestyle change. Yeah. So I had to force myself to go to bed earlier, but then I was waking up at like 4:20 to get to the gym by like 5. And because by the time 7 a.m. rolled around, it was my day was crazy. Yeah, like phone constantly, text messages, emails, calls, all the things. So that was the only way. That was the only time block I had to myself, and that's the way I had to get it done.
And you did it. It's amazing. 4:20. Whew.
Yeah.
So, it kind of sounds like your personal commitment and journey to your bodies, yourself, did that have an effect on when you decided to sell the business? Were those things connected for you in some way?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe on a subconscious level, but on a conscious level, what really made me determine it was time to sell was a couple things, at least. Is one, the industry itself was getting very saturated. The nature of the work was getting commoditized because everybody in the world was saying, oh, we offer digital marketing services, like the Yellow Pages, printers, all kinds of people. Then you had offshore competition, and then you had companies on the brand side that were building their in-house agencies. And I had told my staff during one of our all staff meetings, like probably around 2014, the biggest competitor we face is the in-house agency.
Yeah.
Because they'll feel threatened by us, and they're going to continue to grow and take on more responsibilities. And so that was just an industry trend that I saw, where kind of the golden age of a digital marketing agencies were being numbered. And also coming out of the 2008 financial crisis, and actually moving back, went through the dot-com bubble and bust, 9/11, then the 2008 financial crisis, and weathered all those storms. And then I just knew something was coming. And I wanted to take advantage of what we built and get a return out of it.
Of course.
Before it was too late. Because in 2008, 2009, 2010, I saw a lot of traditional agencies that got decimated. And in these companies that had, 30, 50 or more employees got shrink down to like 10, 5. Some of them just went out of business. And I was like, I don't want to be that company. I don't want to be, that person that built something great and now there's nothing to show for it.
Right. It's nothing that's not there.
Yeah.
So, return on investment, like it's just not there.
Exactly. Right? So, that was another big factor. I didn't know that the 2020 with the lockdown and everything that happened was going to happen.
Right.
I didn't predict that, but I just knew something was coming, right, and it was going to be a huge economic hit. And I wanted to get the business sold before that happened.
That's huge intuition right there.
Yeah.
And I bet you going back to your practices and having the attunement of your knowing and intuition, because everything else was dialed in.
Yes, because through the Qigong practice, through the personal cultivation work, you tune your body and you're opening up different energetic channels that increases your perceptual awareness and your higher sense of intuition. And I always had a natural attunement to that anyways, but through that practice, it was, really starting to heighten it even more. So it just, it was a very intuitive sense that I had that came into play.
So when you finally sold the business,
yes,
how hard was it for you to step away from, that? Or was it just time?
It was time, because 23 years of owning the company, and we actually sold it on the 23-year anniversary to the day of when the company was started. Nice. Was the day the deal closed. So 23 years. And then I stayed on for 3 more years in my existing role as CEO. And 26 years I equate to a marathon. Each year is a mile, right? So I ran this big marathon, and I was like, I'm good. I'm done. It was a great journey, great run, learned all kinds of things from it, but it was time for a new chapter, and I was totally comfortable with it.
So did you take a pause?
I did. So, gosh, like the first 6 weeks, I just did nothing.
Right?
Yeah, I just kind of had fun, enjoyed time with the family, just kind of lounged around and you
got to unwind from, like you said, it's a marathon.
Yeah, it's a marathon.
So just letting your system rest a little bit.
Exactly. I just had to decompress.
Yeah, and for people like you and I, it feels like I'm not being productive. We're not doing anything, but you are. It's a nervous system drop down and a bit of a clearing your slate.
Yes.
So that you can hit the reset.
Yes.
Right?
100%. Like those first 3 days, I was just kind of, it just kind of laid around and just relaxing and just so like blissed out.
But I call that self-nurture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What do I really want to do today? I did my first solo on that, and it's hard because when you're in the positions that where you are, where you're responsible to a family and to, you have like 50 people in your business, everything kind of comes first.
Yes.
Because you're carrying everything.
Yes.
And so although we become used to it, it's not necessarily healthy all the time.
No.
So when you get to drop down to that, and of course you're still taking care of your family and cultivating those relationships, but to do nothing, it doesn't feel nurturing at first. I will tell you, it feels like you're spinning out until your nervous system finally starts to drop down, and you kind of exhale.
Yes.
Right. All the systems exhale, and then you go, oh, there I am.
Yeah, that's right. 100%. Yeah. Those first, I'd say 6 weeks were just like, decompression, just at peace. But then it was funny because after 6 weeks, I started to get this anxiousness in me, kind of thinking, well, what's next? What am I going to do? Because I can't just sit around and do nothing. That's just
you couldn't. Me. Some people could, but you definitely not.
Yeah, no, I just can't do that.
It's not in you.
Yeah. And, and I wasn't really just sitting around doing nothing either, because I had clients coming to see me for the energy work that I do. But still, I had a lot of free time, and I was just starting to get a little anxious about the future because it was unknown, and I had to go through that and figure that out, which was an interesting process.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So for listeners who don't know what Qigong is, can you tell us a little bit what it is?
Sure. So it's an ancient practice that originated in China thousands and thousands of years ago. And it literally means life force energy skill. So Qi, life force energy, and then Gong is skill. So it's the skill of working with energy, and cultures from around the world have their different methods of working with energy over the ages. And you hear, if you take the woo-woo out of it, and from a more scientific perspective, notable scientists like Einstein and Tesla have expressed in their own way that everything is energy, frequency, and vibration, right? And that's, starting to get to be commonly known and talked about. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics. The way I like to state it is that everything is information expressed as energy, vibrating at various frequencies.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you. And the Qigong practice is just working with that energy, receiving information and working with that information, and creating higher vibrational energy states, higher frequencies, vibrational frequencies, and applying that energy, whether it's for yourself or you're working with another person, to affect their energetic anatomy. Just like we have a physical anatomy, we have an energetic anatomy. It could have an impact on their physical structure.
And oftentimes does.
Yes, absolutely. But then also their energy body. The Chinese like to have things in groups of 3 quite a bit through the traditional Chinese medicine or ancient Chinese medicine practice. So there's the 3 bodies: the physical body, the energy body, and the spirit body. And then 3 what are called Wei Qi fields that mimic those bodies, or they correspond to those 3 bodies. So, the long answer to your question, but essentially it's the skill of working with energy, not only for yourself, but with other people to have a positive impact.
Nice. So there's 3 types of Qigong, right?
There is. So from a traditional perspective, there's martial Qigong, medical Qigong, and spiritual Qigong.
And what's the differences?
So the difference is really in the application, because it's all energy, and it's the skill of working with energy. So in like my early days of studying Chinese Kung Fu, there was a variety of martial Qigong exercises I learned, which was geared towards developing power for striking and also defensive power. And the application is in a martial context. Okay. So that's the difference there. With medical Qigong, it's like the other end of the spectrum, where you're not doing it to hurt people, you're doing it to heal people. Where you're working with energy to bring about healing. And in my way of how I like to organize it or classify it in 3 buckets also is healing, self-transformation, and optimization as an energetic optimization. Yeah. So that's like the medical aspect, that the way I like to look at it. And then the spiritual Qigong is really meant to increase your connection with the divine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, regardless of what one's belief system is. Right. It's whatever one's belief system is, it actually enables you to lean into that even more so. Because some people can be concerned, like, oh, well, what is this? Is this, not of God, and et cetera. Certain belief systems may look at it that way. But really, if you just have that open mind and you work with the practice and you find yourself building a greater relationship and connection with the divine.
Well, and it's all about that elevating that energy so
right.
that you can hear him.
That's right.
And that you can sense it with all your being.
Yes. By increasing your vibrational frequency, you're raising yourself up so that the higher realms can kind of come down and you can meet in the middle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have that openness, as you call it,
yes,
to receive.
Right. 100%.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, that's so amazing. So you also developed a workshop, right? And is it Qigong for business professionals?
Yes. Right now it's an online class. I'll probably start having workshops pretty soon in the near future. But right now I'm teaching online, and there's a couple different programs. But yes, one of the programs is Qigong for business professionals. And I designed that program from my perspective, from my personal experience as an entrepreneur, a business leader, and how Qigong had a profound impact on me and helped, this turnaround, as I mentioned, and enabled me to have higher levels of performance through that energetic optimization. I went through my own healing,
yes,
self-transformation,
yes,
and then optimization. So that program is designed specifically for business professionals, whether they're entrepreneurs, founders, or executives, to bring about that healing, that self-transformation, and that energetic optimization through a variety of different exercises and meditations that I put into the program that are appropriate for that context. And also some mindset teachings from my book, Business Kung Fu.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about the business Kung Fu. What inspired it?
So books were my very first passion in life. When I was young, super young, as soon as I could read, I always had a book in front of my face, like just constantly reading. And as I grew older, as a teenager, I remember thinking, oh, one day I would like to write a book. Yeah, I didn't know on what, but yeah, I had such a passion for books. I was just like, yeah, one day I'd love to write a book. And then around 2011, I think it was, I was like, I think it's time to start writing that book. And then the concept.
You were in the midst of the grind.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, 2011, you were still, and then you just decided with your free time, you were going to write a book.
Yeah. I know, right? It's like, I just wanted to punish myself.
For you.
Yeah.
It's an outlet, though.
It becomes
exactly. A creative outlet.
It's a creative outlet.
For yourself.
And one of the things that, I'll get back to the book in a second, but as I redefined what my next chapter in life was going to be, and I was defining my purpose, the act of creation, I realized, is extremely important to me. It's where I am in joy. Yeah. And so going back to 2011, I want to write a book. It's time. And to start creating that, it was joyful. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of, it did help me from a mental, emotional standpoint, kind of break away from all the craziness. But it took me 12 years to finish the book.
Well, that's okay.
Because I had limited time.
Yeah, it's because it's a creation.
Yeah, and actually it was much better that it took that amount of time.
Agreed.
Yes, because if I would have wrote the book a decade ago, it wouldn't have been as good of a book because of all the experience I gained over those 12 years that went into the book because I captured that journey and all the lessons along the way.
So I'm going to show you guys the book because I have it. Oh, sorry. I'm a little short. And I read it. And so this is Craig's Business Kung Fu. It's an amazing journey. It talks about his journey. You know, this book has, you mentioned the 5 elements.
Yes.
Can you talk about those a little bit? And I'm going to find my quote that I want to share with people.
So in the first chapter, actually, I talk about building a foundation, which is essential. It was essential in my martial arts training, and it was essential for building a business, and really in any sort of endeavor that you go into, right? You got to build that foundation. And in this first chapter, I introduce a framework for success. I call it the 5 elements of success, or 5 elements of entrepreneurial success. But whether it's in an entrepreneurial context or just a general life context, it's a model that, you know, really transcends all aspects of life, because it's based on Chinese 5 element theory, which in the Chinese culture, 5 element theory is pervasive across all aspects of life, whether it's food, martial arts, medicine, spirituality, music. There's this 5 element theory, and to just simply introduce it, there's 5 elements that constitute everything in reality, including us and everything in existence. And that's fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And those elements operate in cycles and also have relationships with each other that can have, you know, that have these influences on each other that can have, you can say, positive or negative impacts. And it's a really highly sophisticated, deep, profound model that you can just study and study and study and study. So, you know, I have a familiarity with that, and it comes into play, especially with my Qigong practice, with healing and bringing in the 5 elements. And there's a correspondence with, I say, like the 5 yin organs. And
that's right.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating. So through that understanding of 5 element theory, I was inspired by that. And it is through an intuitive moment. I remember because I was speaking with my first martial arts teacher at the time, and we were having this conversation about, he does coaching, like high school coaching now. And I think it was maybe about like the younger generation today and how there's some challenges with discipline and all that, right? And in this really intuitive moment, the 5 element model just came to me. And it's like, yeah, it's you have to have passion that leads to discipline, that leads to expertise, which builds confidence and extends to faith. And then I was like, wait a second.
That's it.
That's it. And I was like, I thought about it, and I was on my way home. I was like, that was my journey. That was my business journey. That was to a T. And I thought about it more, and I thought about it more. And I was trying to poke holes at it. I was like, no, this is exactly it. So then I just expanded, and in the book, I cover it, but I don't take a deep dive into it. So when I speak, I take a deep dive into like presentations. And when I speak to audiences, I take a much deeper dive. That might be in my next book, might be a deep dive. You're going
to have to do an autobiography.
Yeah. So, but yeah, with the 5 element model, as I stated, it's a journey, and it doesn't have to start with passion. I just like to start there because that's the way it started for me. And it's just easier for me to speak to. But it can start anywhere with any of those elements.
So it's not like a step, it's more of a circle.
Yeah, it's a circle. Okay. It's a cycle. Yeah. And there's that generative cycle where you're going through each of these elements, and the elements are the potential of each of those elements is expanding, and you're fulfilling that potential. And then there's also the opposite direction, the destructive cycle, where things can diminish. All right. And each of these elements could have conditions of excess or deficiency that can have these adverse impacts on other elements. So the key is to have balance.
Right.
Yeah, you go through these 5 elements and you're building that potential and fulfilling that potential, but in a balanced manner, keeping the elements balanced, because as soon as you get knocked out of balance, that creates blockages.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be stagnation or blockages that impede your advancement with whatever you're working on. It's just like in the energetic practice, yes. Working with people and administering Qi to the energetic anatomy, you're removing stagnation, you're clearing blockages so that the energy can flow freely. So it's like that too. You want to be in this balanced state. And life has a funny way of knocking us out of balance, even if we're in balance and we're like a master of balance. Well, life is funny and it'll hit you with
It likes to test us.
It likes to test us, to throw curveballs at us or sucker punch us. And it's about how quickly can you get back to balance and maintain that balance, because you're going to get knocked out of balance.
Well, yeah. And I think that the practice, all the next things that come up that knock us off balance or, take us out of our mindset, they're opportunities to practice what we have learned. Mm-hmm. And so that after it becomes more second nature to start realizing, oh, I'm off. And it takes a lot quicker to rebalance.
That's right.
Right? Once you find the balance. But like you said before, when you said, I didn't even know how out of balance I was.
That's right.
So once you find it, it's, I don't know if it's a tuning fork, but I think you can sort of feel yourself shifting off much quicker than when you're way off.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Like if you have a tuning fork and then you strike it and then there's an instrument and there's that disharmony because so that's another way to explain it and to look at it. So I like that analogy. That's musical. So I get it.
I knew you'd like that.
Yeah, I understand it. But yeah, and the big thing too is when you have that balance and you say you get knocked out, you quickly get back and regain it. It really helps you to navigate all the chaos that
very much so.
is around you. And just like when I found myself much more centered and balanced through the introduction to medical Qigong back in 2014 and going into 2015, it really enabled me, as I stated, to perform and reach higher levels of success. But that wasn't because all the stress and negative events stopped. Right. All that just kept coming and at greater degrees. But I was just able to navigate that much better. And it's kind of like being in the eye of the hurricane where there's all this chaos around you, but in the center, it's still, you're calm. Peaceful. Yeah, it's peaceful. Yeah. It's that center point where everything is still, is where you are balanced and everything opens up for you and you can be creative. You can problem solve despite all the chaos that's amidst
the chaos. Mm-hmm. So this is I don't know, this is what their whole podcast became. So I feel very connected to you. I'm just going to read I don't know, it's like my favorite little bit. This chapter says it's be of service to self so you can be of service to others for a lifetime. And so here's just a little extra. If I had to summarize a recommended approach, think of it this way. It is better to be of service to yourself so that you can then be of service to others. If you spend all your time putting everyone else before yourself, you will eventually burn out through a damaged mind, body, and spirit. By taking care of yourself first, you can last a lifetime in service to others. And I just think that's beautiful because I do think that we are also here to serve in some capacity. And so to be true to that, you do have to nurture yourself and you do have to not put yourself first in a selfish way, but or even survival, it's so that you can be greater of service to others. And so I actually really like that.
Thank you. That's definitely one of my key messages that I love to talk about. And it's really that story that I mentioned earlier of what I sacrificed, especially from a health perspective. And I just did not have the energy like I used to be able to be of service to others. I couldn't perform to the level that I used to be able to. I was always putting everyone before me. And yeah, I could be seen as noble or, unselfish, very giving. And
Yeah, but
that's
then when
great.
you're sick, nothing works.
That's right. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't make any sense
No, it
because then
doesn't
it's
make
not
sense.
sustainable.
Exactly. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the analogy of, the river that always has this flowing water, like when we talk about flow, versus a lake. Once it's dried up, man. Like, it's gone.
Yeah, that's right. When the heat evaporates, all the water is dry. It's like, that's it.
And so if you're not putting any more into it, nourishment, analogy to water, it will dry up. And
Yes.
so that will lead to disease.
Mm-hmm.
It could lead to very high mental stress, all the diseases of any of the bodies.
Yes.
And so it's not this luxury,
Yeah.
like when we grew up, getting a massage was like, who are you? Or,
Yeah.
or, treating yourself to something.
Right.
And, I know people, they feel bad for getting their hair done. But all of that, if it brings you joy or if it makes you feel really good, and it's different for everyone, I think we need to put more attention on that, because we'd be so much nicer to each other as a society, and fulfilled and
right.
grateful.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, just keeping yourself balanced through whatever means of self-care that works for you. For me, Qigong's a huge factor. I also do strength training and martial arts again, and steps and, nutrition. But, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
You look at 100 people, they all are going to have their own unique set of activities that are going to be unique to them. And that's great. It's just a matter of finding out what those are.
Yeah, what actually, you have to try out a few to figure out what actually brings you joy.
Yes.
And it may change over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I used to rock climb. Now I'm like a dog walker, it changes depending on how your body's holding up. We played a little bit too much sports. And so there's certain things that the thought of it sounds fun, but the reality is not conducive.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's all kinds of like recreational things I used to do, like skiing and with the sea-doos on the water, all the jet skis and all that stuff. And all kinds of things like that, just, be fun, but I definitely would take it a lot easier than the way I used to go at it.
Right. Same.
Yeah.
I went snowboarding with my son after 25 years, and I was like, I'm still cool. I can still, and then I took kind of a good fall.
Oh yeah. That hurts when you fall.
I think I'm ready for lunch. You go on and it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was still fun, but I think that the fear of falling or the fear of injury is a little bit more profound as you get older.
Yeah, it is. It is for sure. It's for sure.
So after everything, leaving your company, deepening your healing practice, writing this book, Business Kung Fu, and I'll actually have this in the show notes, and we'll have a way to contact Craig about his workshops and the work he's doing now. Those will all be in the show notes. So you don't have to take notes while we're talking.
Cool.
But after everything, who are you now?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you look at labels like, oh yeah, CEO or author, speaker, Qigong master, or doctor of Chinese energetic medicine. They're all labels. They really aren't truly who I am. So if I'm going to really express who I am truly, the way I like to state it is I'm a unique divine expression of the Creator experienced as joy.
Oh, that's good.
Thanks.
That's a good one. Did you just come up with that's really good? I like that.
Actually, I came up with that as I was figuring out my next chapter, because I was like, well, who am I? Mm-hmm. Yeah, who am I really?
And I think we need to stop at certain points, maybe not even just when one chapter is over, but along the way, there might need to be a little bit of redefining going on, or just reinforcement of this is why you started this, even though it's really hard right now. Or maybe when you, like you said, when I'm done, there's that anxiety of what's next, or who am I now?
Yes.
But then allowing yourself to sit with it and having it come up.
Right.
Right. Because, the only thing constant is change.
That's right. That's right.
So being able to flow within that, but taking those moments to redefine or rediscover or even figure out for the first time, who are you?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that goes in line with staying balanced.
100%. It's really like what I just stated is really that center point, that still point of balance where everything is possible from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can have this label and that label and that label and this label and that label, but it all stems from that center point of who you truly are.
Yes. And who you are is what makes you, I would say, good or passionate about all those labels that you have.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
But it all stems from that center.
Yes.
Without that center, I don't know that I don't know that you would have, first of all, been able to achieve everything that you have, but also would it have been fulfilling? Would you have achieved the levels you achieved in business and so forth if you didn't intuitively and go back to at points in your life of having that still point, that center?
Yeah, I don't think I would have achieved as much as I did because it just kind of naturally came about where I was living my true authentic self through the joy of creation.
Mm-hmm.
When I started the business, it was creating something brand new by combining a passion for music and a passion for technology, bringing that together through a brand new technology and creating something that's never been done before.
Yeah.
Right. And that was an act of creation. And that's when I'm in my greatest joy, is when I'm in that act of creation. That's when I'm in a flow state where I'm totally present and losing that
infinite.
sense of time.
That's where the infinite possibilities come from,
right.
is that flow state.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. 100%. So yeah, it just living through that center point of who you truly are, and the way I've defined it for myself. And even that, as I started the next chapter, it's the same thing, taking a passion for the Qigong work that I do. And then all these years of being an entrepreneur in the world of business and, the passion from that, and then combining that into something new is what I'm doing today. So I've just added again, and I have the energy and the desire to move forward, and it's just a way to be authentic and
mm-hmm.
find joy in whatever you set out to do.
Yeah. And I had said this before in one of my episodes that without joy, there's no gratitude.
Yeah. It's hard to have gratitude.
And I think that in order to be thankful for all that you have been blessed with, your gifts and talents and the hard work, you got to find a space for that joy.
Yes. Because it definitely, if there's no joy, then yes, it does impact gratitude because you just don't think about it. You think about the problems more.
You're in that negative state.
Yeah, the negative state and the stress and the problems and the challenges and not really being able to overcome that, but kind of spiraling down. That was that state I was in and that I found myself in around 2014. Mm-hmm. I wasn't in joy.
No, because it becomes about everything coming at you mm-hmm. versus almost having not the foundation, but I guess this natural boundary, because, our energetic space goes out a certain amount,
yes.
But being able to foster that and,
mm-hmm.
Every day, make sure that that's filled.
Yeah.
You see the world very differently.
Yeah. 100%.
Right.
Yes,
very
100%.
Differently.
Yes.
Okay. So if you could give someone navigating their own shift a mm-hmm. piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say slow down, because there may be like a rush to figure that out. A lot of people are in a rush. And my first medical Qigong teacher, I was in a ruch to like advance.
Learn it all.
Yeah, because my personality type A and entrepreneur, CEO, and I need dude, don't be in a rush. Slow is fast.
Slow is fast.
Yeah, and I was like, Exactly. And after he probably told me that like 10 times, I started to it started to sink in. Yeah. I was like, huh. Okay. And then I really started to realize, okay, I get it. I get it. So that'd be the first thing I think would be to slow down and maybe be willing to even pause.
Pause. That's a big word that I use too.
Yeah. Yeah. Pause, be still, and just go deep within, be introspective.
Yes.
And then see what comes about for you. Because that's when I started defining my next chapter and my purpose moving forward, that's what I did. And it can really come about. So that's the big thing. And then what we talked about earlier, just making sure that you prioritize self-care. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. And if there was a third thing, just making sure that you make time for the sweetness of life, whether that's the relationships you have or certain activities, passions, whatever that may be, to just make sure there's some time for that.
Great advice.
Thanks.
Where can people find you, find your work, contact you?
Sure. So a couple of ways for all the professionals out there. LinkedIn, super easy because it's just LinkedIn/Craig Cooke with an E at the end, Craig Cooke, Cooke. And I have actually established my first LinkedIn newsletter. So it's brand new. So
of course,
people could come across that as well on LinkedIn. But then I have my website. I have two websites, actually. I have a website for my energy medicine practice. So that's C2energymedicine.com. And then my other site is C2pro.io. So the letter C and then squaredpro.io. And that's more by my business mentorship site where I'm providing advisory, consulting, executive coaching services, combining with the energetic practices.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I will put all of those links in the show notes so you can find Craig and experience all his wonder. I've actually been on Craig's table. So it is amazing because that was the first experience I had with Qigong. And I got a lot out of it.
Cool.
I thought, I don't know if I could start another thing for me because I thought, well, maybe I should do some energy medicine in the Chinese world. But I think I'll stick with what I've been doing. I'll come to you for that and refer Craig on. So if you have any questions for Craig or you have any comments about the show, please let me know. I will review them and we will address them. And so Craig's story is such a reminder that sometimes real breakthrough doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from slowing down, listening inward, and honoring what's true. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, Craig.
Thank you. That's a great summary too. I appreciate that. Thank you.
It really is. And so until next time, stay open, stay curious, and stay with your shift. We'll see you next time.